Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our NPERS School Plan webinar. My name is Jeremy Calcara. I'm the training specialist here at NPERS, and with me today is Heather Critchfield Smith, the marketing and communications specialist and manager of our education services team here at NPERS. We are excited to talk to you today about your plan and how it works. Between the two of us, we have about 15 years of experience working with your retirement plans. So you are in good hands today. I do say it that way to make myself sound a little bit smarter. I have 3 of those 15 years and the other 12 belong to Heather, but we're excited to talk to you about it today. So we're glad you're here. Overall, I've been with the state of Nebraska for about 4 years. Before that, I was in insurance underwriting for almost a decade. I won't mention which company, but they are known to be proud of being like a good neighbor. And then before that, I was a youth pastor. So if I get a little bit preachy about your retirement, you will know why. If I try to take up an offering to supplement my own retirement, you do have my permission to stop me. So, um, I'm also a dad, so that's going to explain the dad jokes you're going to hear from me today. I apologize for none of them. The rule is if I get 5 eye rolls from all 5 of my children from a joke, I go ahead and put it in the program. So this is one that they just hated recently. I was telling them how in the Old West, cowboys would hang a lantern from their horse when they were traveling at night so that other people could see them on the road. And it was the first case, the first use of satellite technology. Get it? Satellite. Anyway, um, there's more of those to come today, I suppose. Um, We're going to get started here with some housekeeping. Whoops. First off, you might notice here that your mics are muted and your cameras aren't on. That's not because we don't want to see your beautiful faces. It's just because Webex tends to run at the speed of the person with the slowest bandwidth. So when we're all on with our mics and cameras, it can get pretty bogged down. So it's only Heather and I that you'll hear and see today. There's nothing wrong with your system. Other things I want to bring your attention to is you should have received in your email that I sent you with the link. There should be a link to or a set of documents that you can open that were attached to that email where you can follow along with our presentation here today. If you didn't open those documents here and you don't have that email, you should have also had the opportunity to open those documents when you signed in today. But Heather has put the link to those documents in the chat there so you can go find those if you'd like to follow along with our presentation today. And then before we do get going here any further, I wanted to just address question and answer time. Got a few things we want to bring up. First of all, you'll notice there on the right-hand side of our presentation, there's going to be a couple of different panels. There's going to be one that says chat, and there's going to be one that says Q&A. If you don't see one there that says Q&A, if you go down to the bottom right-hand side of that page, there's going to, of this event, there's going to be a little button with 3 dots on it. If you click on those 3 dots, there should be an option you can pick that says Q&A that'll bring up a Q&A panel. If you do have questions today, and we welcome questions, we want to answer as many questions as we can today. We're going to ask that you put them in that Q&A panel and not in the chat panel. We're going to put resources to the things that we're talking about in our event here in the chat panel. And when we have questions in there, it kind of, those they can get lost in those resources that we're posting. Also with the Q&A panel, it allows us to keep track of which questions we've already answered. So it's helpful for us as presenters. But if you do have questions today, feel free to get them in there. You don't need to wait until I'm done to ask your questions. Put them in there as you think about them. Heather will be answering questions as I chat today, and I will be answering questions as she does, so we can go ahead and get those things taken care of as you have questions. I do want to just give you, just temper your expectations a little bit with the questions too, though. Heather and I don't have access today to your personal account information. So if you ask us a question that maybe requires a little bit too much knowledge, specific knowledge about your personal retirement accounts, we are going to have to refer you to the call center because, like I said, we don't have access today to that information. And if we do that, please know we're not trying to blow you off or avoid your question or anything like that. It's just a lot more important to us today that you get correct information than it is that you get, quick information. You don't want me to guess about anything. I want to give you correct information. And if I can't do so, I'm going to send you to the call center. Our call center people are really good at what they do. They know your plan inside and out. And when they're talking to you, they can give you what I can't, which is they can sit there and look at your account information while they're speaking to you. So just keep that in mind if we do have to ask you to um, to call the call center. Also, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, at the end of the call, at the end of our seminar today, as you leave, you'll have an opportunity to fill out a survey about our event. We would love to have you fill out that survey. The feedback we get from you does help us sharpen these events and make them into, just more into what our members want to get out of them. So we do covet your feedback there, and you'll have the opportunity to give it once you sign out today. But with that, we're going to go ahead and move on here. We do have quite a few things that we're going to cover today. We're going to lay out exactly how your plan works. We're going to talk about all the fun stuff like death and taxes and reemployment. We're going to talk about the options you have at retirement. But first, we want to start with our contact information and how to get a hold of us. This is the office that you need to contact when you're ready to start getting that benefit. Those two phone numbers up at the top there are the two numbers we would ask you to call, depending on where you are in the state. If you need to call the call center, our fax number is there. Our website is npers.ne.gov. You will hear us mention that roughly 47,000 times a day. So by the end of the day, you should have that memorized. What our website is, npers.ne.gov, and then our physical address is there as well. But like I mentioned, we are very proud of our website. We are excited about the things that we have on there for our members to learn more about their plans. npers.ne.gov is where you need to go to find out more information. When you visit this website, you can see a lot of things. If you go to our publications page, you can see what we have cooking as far as publications and new newsletters and such for your plan. We have a newsletter that comes out for your plan every March and September that you can find on that page. Our forms page has all of our forms that we're going to talk to you about today on there, beneficiary forms, excuse me, stuff like that. So you can find all that there. Most of them are fillable forms as well, so you can fill them out online and print them out so they're easier for us to read. If you're someone like me who has a suspect handwriting, our videos are all on there as well, so you can find videos to um, basically everything that you're going to hear me say today and everything you're going to hear Heather say today. You can find in a video on our website as well. We also have a YouTube page where you can check out all of our videos to give you more content to learn about your plans. And then we also have our benefit estimator on there, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But up at the right-hand corner, I want to point out that login button. If you click on that, you can create an account on npers.ne.gov. And when you create an online account prior to your retirement, you're going to be able to log in whenever you want to see what we have on file for you, for your compensation history, for your service time history. Those are two big pieces of the formula that we're going to use when we calculate your benefit when it's time for you to retire. And so you can keep on top of what we have on file there by having this online account. You can also review your beneficiaries on there, which is important. It's important to know where you can review your beneficiaries because of all the things I might ask you to call the call center about. I'll never ask you to call them to ask them who your beneficiaries are. They can't tell you that information over the phone. It's a violation of privacy law. And then once you do retire, you'll be able to get your tax information, your 1099-R there on our online account as well. So if you don't have it, I would highly, highly recommend it, especially for our school plan members. Like I say, when we come to, looking at the formula that's going to determine your monthly benefit amount when you retire, the two biggest pieces of that formula are your compensation and your years of service. And so if you make sure and check in on us, make sure that what's being reported to us by your school is what you also have on file for your compensation, for your service history. Then if there is a mistake, a discrepancy, you can notice it right away. And it's a lot easier to fix that stuff if you notice it right away, within a year or two than it is when you apply for retirement and we have discrepancies from, 1987 or something like that. So it's a great tool for you to have to stay on top of your retirement, to have accurate information to use in our benefit estimator. To create the account, you need a valid email address, your social security number, and a retirement number. If you don't know your retirement number, that's normal. I don't know mine either, and I work here. But you can find it either on some of your old statements. But if you don't have old statements or don't see it on there, you can sure call in the call center as well, and they'll tell you what your retirement number is. Okay. The benefit estimator is another great tool there on our website where you can get an idea of the kind of benefit you're looking at receiving when you retire. If you haven't used this tool, I'd highly recommend it. A lot of good information can be found here by using our benefit estimator. It's on the non-secure side of our site, so you don't have to have that account to use it. You don't need to log in any way. You don't tell us, you don't notify us that you're using it. We're not saving any information, and you don't have to enter any personally identifying information either, like your name or your social security number, anything like that. So you can use it as much as you want without anybody knowing that you're using it, or keeping track. So if you haven't, I would recommend checking it out. But what you're going to want to do is first thing it's going to ask you is for your date of birth. After that, it's going to ask you for your estimated termination date. And there are a couple of dates that Heather and I are going to talk about a lot today. Um, First one is called your effective date. I'll get to that here in a minute. But the other one is your termination date. And when we say termination date, what we mean by that is the last day you could be required to render service under your contract. It is worded that, so the last day your school could possibly call you in and, require you to work is what we mean by your termination date. And then you're going to put in the estimated month when you want to begin your benefits. The day your benefit begins, that's called your effective date. That's another date we'll talk about a lot today. And I'll break that down a little bit more, how you establish that and stuff as we go on further. But then you're going to put in your estimated years of service and then when you began plan participation. The reasons it's asking for that is there are 4 different tiers in the plan, and there are different benefits depending, or different, a few changes depending on which tier you might be in. We'll talk about those and how those are different as we go on here and come across those. But basically, if you're in tier 1, it's going to ask you afterwards for your estimated highest annual salaries, your top 3 estimated highest annual salaries. If you're in tiers 2, 3, or 4, it's going to ask you for your estimated 5 highest annual salaries. And something that is nice here about our benefit estimator is that it does have help buttons at the end of these fields here. So if you're wondering exactly what it is we're looking for, sorry about that. If you're wondering exactly what it is we're looking for, you can click on those buttons and it'll give you an idea of, a better idea of what it is we're asking for and explain it further. But after you enter all that information I just told you about, it's going to ask you for your account balance. It's important to note that you don't have to put in your account balance if you don't know it. It is optional. The reason it's optional is because when we're figuring your benefit, we are basing the amount of your benefit that you're going to receive every month on a formula, and none of the None of the factors in that formula are your account balance. Your account balance doesn't matter when we're figuring out your monthly benefit. The reason um, the reason we're asking for it is because there is one particular disbursement option where if you were to choose it, the benefit to your beneficiary, if you were to pass away, would be the remainder of the money you had contributed to the account that you hadn't been paid out yet. So that's why it's asking for it. But if you don't know it, you do not have to put it in there. You're then going to put in your beneficiary type and their beneficiary's birth date. And then right there where it says, would you like to calculate your taxes? We actually had that removed. That's not there anymore. It wasn't very accurate, so we had it taken off. So, but you enter all that information, you click on calculate your estimate, and then on the next page, you're going to come to something that looks like this. And you see at the top there, you see all these options. Option 1, life only. Option 2, modified cash, refund, stuff like that. Those are the options that you're going to have when you retire as far as your disbursement options. Heather is going to break down what each one of those do for about an hour later, so I'm not really going to talk about them much here. But I do want to let you know that where it says option 1, life only, option 2, modified cash, those are links. So if you do listen to us today and you go away from here and use our benefit estimator and you maybe forget what one of these options does, which is totally understandable, there's a lot of them there. You just click on that and it'll take you to the place in your plan handbook where you can find or where it explains what that option does and what that means. Then the other thing I want to point out up there before we move on is where it says option 2 modified cash refund. That's the one where I told you about that why it's asking for your account balance. So if you put a 0 in, you didn't know your account balance, that's going to read 0. Just as an FYI, if you don't know your account balance and you'd like to, that's another great bit of information that you can find on that online account access. Then at the bottom of the page here, you're going to see what's basically it's basically a receipt, right? It's telling you that this estimate above is based on this information here that you gave us. And then at the bottom of this page on the lower right-hand side, we do have a printer icon so you could print these out. At this point, I just like to encourage everybody to use this estimator and to use it often. Do a lot of different estimates. Something you'll hear people who talk about retirement say a lot is, and it's morbid, but it's true, that the only way to make a perfect retirement plan is to know exactly when you're going to die. In my opinion, since none of us know that information, the second best way is to just, have a lot of information at your disposal when you are making this type of when you're making these decisions as far as your retirement goes. You might not see the whole picture, but every little piece of information you have is like just a little bit stronger flashlight to help you navigate these times where you're making these decisions. And so, maybe you're 60 years old here today and you have 20 years of service credit and you're thinking about retiring at the end of next year. Okay. And um, but you're also thinking, I still enjoy driving the bus, teaching the kids, whatever it is that you do, you still enjoy it. So maybe I could hold on for, maybe 2 more years, maybe 5 more years. I'd encourage you to run estimates for all of those scenarios. See what the difference in your monthly amount is going to be as that service time increases, so that you can, have a good picture there when you're talking with your financial advisor, with your spouse, with your family about these decisions. You can print these out and have them there with you when you're having these talks. So that's our benefit estimator. I would highly recommend you play around with it. It's a really nice tool there for you to use. All right, now how do we apply for retirement? What is the time frame we are looking at? This is the information everybody wants to know, right? How do I get that money? Well, the first thing that I want you to know is that you don't have to contact us until you are ready to start getting that benefit. So if you're someone here who maybe you're thinking about leaving the school system, pursuing a different career, maybe your 50s, 60s, or whatever, you want to pursue something different, but you're not ready to start taking that benefit. Either you're not yet eligible, or you don't want the reductions anywhere. and whatever your reason might be, you don't need to call us and let us know that you're leaving the school system. You don't need to fill out any paperwork to let us know that you're leaving. The money that you've contributed, it's just going to stay there and it's going to be ready for you when you are ready to start getting that benefit. So when you are ready, though, when it is time to start getting that monthly benefit, you're going to want to give us a call. No more than 6 months and no less than 1 month prior to when you want to start receiving your retirement benefit. An office visit is not required. You do not have to come in and see us in order to start this. That's a common misconception. Most retirement balls start rolling with just a phone call. So once you call us and let us know to get that ball rolling, what we're going to do is we're going to review your work history and your salary history and your years of service in order to create an estimate of benefits. And then we are going to send you that estimate of benefits along with an application for retirement and along with some tax paperwork that we will send you about 30 to 45 days prior to your desired effective date. And then you simply need to complete and mail in that application to NPERS in order to establish that effective date and start getting that money. So it's not a complicated process. It's nothing to, it's not foreboding, nothing to be worried about, anything. So bullet points, up to 6 months and no less than 1 month prior to when you want to start getting your benefit, give us a call. We're going to send you out a packet 30 to 45 days prior to your desired effective date. You're going to complete that packet and mail it in order to get that effective date established to get your money. All right, so it used to be, or maybe you've heard this metaphor before. We have people talk about retirement as like a three-legged stool. Your retirement income being that stool, the legs on that stool being, the your company's pension plan for one leg, your own personal savings for another leg, and Social Security as the other leg. But something that we're seeing in the retirement industry is people are heading into retirement a lot of times with one or two legs on that stool being pretty rickety or not there at all. Um, so, we see a lot of people heading into retirement without much of a pension plan, for any reason, number of reasons. Maybe they never really worked at a job where one was offered. Maybe they worked at several different jobs and never really, consolidated all the smaller accounts that they have into a bigger one so that their money could really start working for them. I know my biggest financial blunder is when I did work for that unnamed insurance company that has Jake from State Farm and all their commercials. They had a really nice retirement plan, but when I started working there, I had 3 kids. By the time I stopped working there, I had 5 kids, and since their plan was optional, I thought that I needed that money for diapers, and that 65-year-old Jeremy could fend for himself. And so I didn't have any retirement savings. I didn't start saving for retirement until I started working for the state of Nebraska, and at that point, they forced you to start saving for retirement. Um, so the truth is that if I had to retire tomorrow, I would have enough in my retirement account for maybe a nice long weekend in Kansas City, but that would be about it, and I'd be stuck. That leg on my stool is pretty rickety. And then just in general, people aren't as good at saving as they used to be. The reason the reasons are varied. Some of them are reasons that are controllable, like maybe tightening our belts and being a little bit more disciplined. For me, not going, my wife and I live in a house that's 6 blocks away from a Popeyes, and not going to Popeyes 8 times a week would probably be better for my savings, for my bottom line, and I could easily make that choice. But it's so hard to say no to those chicken tenders. But then there's, of course, reasons for not saving that we don't have any control over. A big one that I think we're all facing right now um, is our wages not keeping up with inflation. Unless you got a raise that was about 8.5% last year, your dollar is worth less right now than it was the year before. I think I read the other day that food costs are even up higher than inflation right now. Food costs are closer to a 12 to 14% raise that we're seeing in food costs. And when eggs are $6 a dozen, It's not like, I still need eggs, but it's not like my gas company says, well, you can pay us a little bit less because eggs are more expensive. No, you still have to pay everything you had to pay before, only now it's more expensive. And so, that money, at least for me, that comes that eats into the money we're putting into our savings account. So, for whatever reason, maybe they are reasons that you can't control. Maybe there are reasons that you can. Everybody, you have to know yourself. But we're just not as good at saving anymore. So a lot of people are heading into retirement with very little in the way of saving. And so something we're seeing is people headed into up to 25% of retirees right now are heading into retirement, expecting Social Security to be at least 90% of their income. And that's a problem because Social Security as a program is only designed to replace about 35 to 40% of your lifetime monthly average earnings. So think about your income right now and reduce that by 60 to 65%. And that's what a lot of people are headed into retirement having right now. So um, what we're seeing as people head into retirement in this situation is people having to add a fourth leg to their income stool here in retirement, and that fourth leg being earnings from a job in retirement in order to supplement their income. And you know what? If that's something that you want to do, I think that's great. We do meet a lot of people who are ready, especially in Nebraska, when we go to places like we were in La Vista yesterday, we were in McCook last week. Or last month, we were in Gearing the month before. And when you're in places like that, you're about a half an hour away from being in a different state. La Vista, they're in Iowa, there in about 20 minutes. In McCook, you can be in Kansas or Colorado in about 30, 45 minutes. In Gearing, you can be in Wyoming or Colorado in about 45 minutes. And so I meet a lot of people who are ready to step back, but they still love what they do. Working with kids still brings them joy and lights a fire. Driving the bus is still really enjoyable to them. Serving the community, whatever. But they need to take a step back. So they're planning on retiring and taking their money from NPERS and going across state lines and working part-time at a school system in Kansas or Wyoming or Colorado or Iowa, whatever it is, or whatever your plans might be. If they involve working and you're excited about it, that's great. But what we do think is sad is when all you want to do is go fishing, play with the grandkids, travel with your spouse, but you can't because you have to put in some time at a job somewhere. And that's what we want to avoid. That is why it's important to stay informed and take control of your retirement. Be aware of what your money is doing. Be aware of how your retirement works. It does take more than luck to achieve financial security in retirement. And it is nice when we have these webinars for school members, because presumably everyone on this call who's a member has at least two pretty strong legs on that stool, with your Social Security and then also your defined benefit plan here with NPERS, both of which are designed to give you that lifetime monthly income stream. And as we go on here and dig deeper into your actual plan, it's important to know that what we're talking about here is your money. The money that you've contributed, it belongs to you. No one else has access to it. The only you can't lose your pension because of bankruptcy or financial hardship, anything like that. The only way that someone might get access to your pension funds would be in the event that you run into some trouble with the IRS or with like a divorce situation. So we like to say you keep your spouse and the tax man happy. You don't have to worry about that money being there for you when you retire. I like to suggest marrying the tax man, and then you only have to keep one person happy. But that ship has sailed for most of us probably. But the money that you contribute, the money that's contributed on your behalf, is invested and it's available to you only when you quit or retire. It is your pension with no Social Security offset, meaning the amount of your monthly benefit does not affect the amount of your Social Security. or vice versa. They're going to be the same no matter how much each one is. But the type of plan that you have as a Nebraska public school employee is called a defined benefit plan. And when you have a defined benefit plan, like I've mentioned, your retirement benefit is a lifetime monthly pension check. Your account balance is not important in determining the amount of that pension check. Instead, we look at a formula to calculate the monthly amount. The formula is determined on these factors here, your salary, your compensation, your years of service. There's a formula factor and an option factor. We're going to talk about each one of these today and how they affect the calculation. But we're going to use those four things to calculate what your benefit could be. And then we are going to look at your age afterwards and determine whether you're going to be eligible for a full unreduced benefit, or if you take it a little bit early, if there's going to be a benefit reduction. Let's talk about funding here for a minute. Your plan is funded in four ways. First, it's that 9.78% of your salary that you contribute to the plan. Your employer then contributes 101% of the amount that you contribute to the plan. The state of Nebraska chips 2% of your salary into the plan, and then all of that money is invested. And actually, the majority of the funding on average for your school plan here comes from the returns on those investments. And as I mentioned, two of the biggest pieces of that formula are your salary and your years of service. We have a couple of places where we can where you can get that information about what we have on file for your salary and years of service. One being that online account, but the other being the account statement that we send you every August. On this account statement, you're going to find what's been reported to us from your school for your service credit for the past year and for your salary for the last year. So I would really highly encourage you to review this when you get it. Don't put it in a folder that says, do not open until 65. Open this up, review it, and make sure the information we've been given is correct, and check that out. You can also see who your beneficiaries are on this annual statement and what we have on file for you for your address, which we'll talk about why that might be important later. Current contributions that you make to the plan are made before taxes. They're pre-tax contributions, but any contributions that you made prior to 1986 were made after taxes. That's not a lot of people, but I always meet at least one or two people at all of our seminars or webinars for whom this matters. So if you've been in the plan since before 1986, the contributions that you made before 1986 were were made after you paid your taxes. So when you start getting a benefit, you are going to pay taxes on your pension, but pre-1986 contributions are going to come back to you tax-free. How it works is it's not going to come back in a lump sum, but a little bit of your benefit payment each month will be tax-free. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the amount of money that you contributed before 1986. We're going to divide that by a number that we come up with actuarially. You like to guess how long you're going to live, and then a little bit of your monthly check will come to you tax-free each month. So just for an example, if you had contributed $5,000 to the plan prior to 1986, and you retire in between the ages of 55 and 60, we're going to divide that $5,000 by 310, assuming you're going to live at least 310 more months after retirement, and you'll get roughly $16 a month of your benefit check will be tax-free. So if you had a benefit that was, $2,000 a month or whatever, you would you would pay taxes on $1,984 of that $2,000, and then the $16 would be tax-free. So that's the safe harbor method. Again, applies to fewer people every year, but it does still apply to quite a large number of our members. But like I mentioned, that the money that you've contributed to the retirement plan has been since 1986 has been contributed before you pay taxes on that money. You haven't paid state or federal income tax. So when you do start getting your benefit, it is considered taxable income. How are those taxes withheld? Well, they're going to be withheld kind of the same way you have your taxes withheld right now from your earnings. So you know that when you begin working for an employer, you fill out a W-4, which tells them how much you want withheld from your paycheck, and then at the end of the year, they send you that W-2, which you'll use to calculate the amount of your taxes that you either have to pay in because you didn't have enough withheld, or maybe you get some back because you had too much withheld. Well, it's basically going to work the same way with your pension. In that retirement packet that we're going to send you 30 to 45 days prior to your desired effective date, along with that estimate and application, you are going to receive a couple of different tax documents that you'll need to fill out and get to us. One is the W-4P and one is the W-4N. On the W-4P, you will tell us how much you need withheld from your benefit check for your federal taxes, and on the W-4N, you'll tell us how much for your Nebraska taxes. You can change the amount being withheld at any time by submitting a new form, but we are automatically going to withhold at the rate that you tell us until you change it. It is important to note that if your retirement plans do involve you moving out of the state of Nebraska, that NPERS can only withhold state taxes for the state of Nebraska. So if you do end up moving from Nebraska to another state, you'll need to fill out a W-4N that lets us know that there's a line on there where you can say you are exempt from Nebraska taxes, and you'll need to return that into us so we can stop withholding those. And then you'll need to contact the state that you move into, if it's a state that does have income tax, where you'll need to let them know, hey, I have this benefit, and I need to figure out how I'm going to get your taxes to you. All right, and as I mentioned, there are 4 different tiers in the plans, and there are some differences in how the plan works depending on which tier you are in. You can know which tier you are in based on when you began in the plan. So if you're here today and you joined the plan prior to July 1st, 2013, you are going to be in tier 1. And if you joined on or after July 1st, 2013, but before July 1st, 2017, you are in tier 2. If you joined on or after July 1st, 2017, but before July 1st, 2018, you are in Tier 3. And if you joined on or after July 1st, 2018, you are in Tier 4. And when we start looking at the formula to determine your benefits, if you are in Tier 1 and when we're looking at your salary history, we are going to look at your 3 highest 12-month periods when we're determining your benefit. And if you are in tiers 2, 3, or 4, we're going to look at your 5 highest 12-month periods of salary when we determine your benefit. And how we calculate those 12-month periods is we start at your final payroll date and we count back 12 months from that moment. And then we count back 12 months from that moment to 12 months, 12 months, 12 months until we go throughout your entire work history to create all of your 12-month periods. And then if you're in tier 1, we simply pick the 3 highest. If you're in tiers 2, 3, or 4, we pick the 5 highest. They don't have to be the last years you worked, and they don't have to be consecutive. We're going to go throughout your entire work history to pick those 3 or 5 highest, regardless of where they are in your work history. And we're going to use those 3 or 5 highest 12-month periods in order to figure your average final salary and compensation. When we are looking at your highest 12-month periods of salary, increases in compensation are capped at 8% per year when calculating the retirement benefit. So, for example, let's say in 2020 I made $50,000. But then in 2021, I got a raise to $55,000. Well, that was a 10% salary increase, like in my pocket that year. But when we are looking at a spreadsheet with all of your 12-month periods of salary on there, we have to cap year to year increases at 8%. So that year would be figured of 2021 would be figured at $54,000, which is 8% more than the year before. The reason for this is there were issues in the defined benefit plans where people were working a lot of overtime and extra duty in their last 5 years in order to skew that average a little bit and kind of try and play with the calculation in that fashion. It's called salary spiking. And so to curb that practice, the legislature put in this salary capping. Now, it's important to note that it was in people's last 5 years that this issue of salary spiking was happening. And so It's only in the last 5 years that we do the capping for your 4-year increases. So what we do is when you retire, we go back 6 years to create a base year of what your salary was that 12-month period. And then from there, we go year to year to cap any increases of over 8% at 8%. So if you're someone who maybe in 2002 you were a teacher, in 2003 you got a job promoted as like an administrator or whatnot, and you saw a fairly significant increase in your pay at that time, that's not something that's going to be capped because that's 20 years ago. It's only in your last 5 years that this capping applies. So after we figure that and get your three highest, your three highest average salaries there, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at your service credit, see how much time you have accrued in the plan. Service credit is granted for time worked while contributions were being made to the retirement plan. This service time is verified to us by your employer. If you decide to take a lump sum for sick leave when you retire, this does not count as service time or salary. If at one point you left the school system and took a refund, this erased your service credit. We'll talk about that more here in a minute. But under the current state statute, 1,000 hours of work equals 1 year of service credit. And 1 year of service credit is the maximum amount that you can receive during the plan year, which is July 1st through June 30th. So once you've worked 1,000 hours for that in that time period, July 1st to June 30th, you've received the maximum amount of time that you can receive for the year, which is 1 year of service credit. But now, what if you're a part-timer? What if you only work 500 hours from July 1st through June 30th? Well, we also award partial service credit, and partial service credit is awarded for the amount of hours that you do. So if you worked 500 hours, you would get a half a year of service credit. 700 hours would be, 0.75 years of service credit. And all of that counts when we're looking at the benefit calculation. Every little bit of service credit that you have goes into that calculation to get that number. So that all does get counted. We also look at your partial service credit when we're looking at the rule of 85, because we will look at your partial service credit versus and how it adds up with your partial age. I'll talk about that more here in just a minute. It is possible that you might get service credit for prior military service. It's pretty rare, but you can find it explained in your seminar materials there on page 11. But as I just mentioned, if you previously quit working in the public school system and took a refund of your retirement account, your service credit was erased at that time. If you return to work in the public school system, you do have the one-time option of repaying that refund and restoring your service credit, provided you meet the following conditions. First, you do need to be a regular employee contributing to the plan. Secondly, your application for purchase of refunded service form needs to be received by NPERS within 5 years of reemployment and at least 60 days prior to termination. And then finally, repayment must be completed within 5 years of reemployment or prior to termination, whichever is earlier. Service credit will be restored in proportion to the amount paid back, and repaying this in full might also potentially return you to prior tier status. You also might have the option to purchase service credit if you would like to. Why would you do this? Why would you spend your hard-earned money on service credit? Well, there's a couple of reasons we see people do this. The first one is, just the simplest. The more service time you have, the higher your monthly benefit is going to be. That's just the way it works. So if you go to our benefit estimator, you're playing with it, you're putting in a bunch of different numbers as far as, oh, I'm at 20 now. Let's see what that is. I'm at 20. Maybe if I wait 2 more years, make 5 more years, you're doing those estimates for different years. You're going to notice the more years you have, the higher that benefit is going to be. It's not exponentially higher, but it is significant. You'll notice a difference. So a lot of people do that calculation to say, well, I can spend this much on a little extra service credit, which will give me, X amount of dollars more per month, and it'll only take me this many years before I've paid that back. I've gotten that paid back to me in benefit payments, and now I'm making money. So people do it for that reason. Another reason people do purchase service credit is to help them reach the rule of 85. Maybe the end of next school year, you're going to be 55 years old and you have 29 years of service credit in. So purchasing that 1 year of service credit will allow you to meet that rule of 85 earlier. But for whatever reason, it is possible that you have the option to purchase service credit if you would like to. The three ways you might be able to purchase service credit would be, the first one is for a leave of absence. You're able to purchase time you spent on a leave of absence. For that option, you're able to purchase time for the amount of time you spent having that leave, up to 4 years. You're also able to purchase time for time you spent working for either an out-of-state school system or for Omaha Public Schools. For that option, you're able to purchase time for the time you spent in that system, up to 10 years. And then everybody in their last year of employment has the option of purchasing up to 5 years of service time um, as they contemplate retirement. What conditions you need to meet to make these purchases can be found on pages 14 and 15 of your seminar packet. But if this is something that you think you'd like to do, we do have an estimator on our site where you can get an idea of how much it might cost to make the service credit purchase you're looking for. You can do this for either the out-of-state OPS service or for the 12-month pre-retirement purchase. If you have a leave of absence, you're going to need to call in to get those estimates. There's a little bit extra stuff that you have to, or that's involved in that. But when you go to the estimator, what you're going to do is you're going to put in the type of service that you want to purchase. You're going to put in your date of birth and when you began plan participation. And at this point, if it was me using this, I would click next. Don't click next. Read the information underneath where it says help here. On all of these pages that you're going to enter, there's a bunch of information that is good for you to know. It's going to tell you, what conditions you need to meet to make this purchase. It's going to tell you timelines for when you need to start working on this. This is important information to know. So don't just neglect the stuff underneath that helpline. Read that, then click next. On this second page, you will put in your estimated termination date and the date that you want your benefits to start. And then you're going to enter your total years of service and your highest 12-month period of salary. Here in our example, I've created someone they're 55 years old and they have 27 years of service credit. So on this next page, you'll see this is where you're going to put in how much you want to purchase, how much service time. Our example here is someone who wants to purchase 3 years to meet that rule of 85. You can purchase years or months. And then you click next here and you're going to come to your estimate. You can see there that for this individual to purchase 3 years of service time, it's going to cost them, almost $59,000. And now that seems like a lot of money because it is, it's a lot of money. But you have to remember, when you're paying for this service time, you're not only paying the portion that you would have paid during that time, you're paying the portion that the state of Nebraska and your employer would have paid as well. So that's the school purchase of service estimator. It's a great tool if you do think you wanted to purchase some service there, either for that out-of-state service or that pre-retirement purchase. And then as we close here, or close my portion here before we take a break, want to talk about eligibility, how you're going to be eligible to receive this benefit. Our plan here for the state of Nebraska for public school employees here in the state of Nebraska is a really great plan. Heather will talk a little bit more about this plan and how great it is. So we're not just going to hand it out to everybody. You do have to do some things in order to be eligible to receive that. Those things are basically, there's 4 things you need to do. The first one is you need to it seems like it's really easy and kind of a no-brainer, but it's pretty difficult sometimes. And so Heather's going to talk about it for a long time later. But you need to terminate employment at all participating employers. So in order to receive this benefit, you do have to stop working for a Nebraska public school. But the other 3 things that you need to do, I'm going to go ahead and talk about now. Those are that you need to be vested in the plan, you need to attain retirement age, and you do need to establish an effective date. Let's start here by talking about vesting. You're vested in the plan once you accrue 5 or more years of service time in the plan. If you're not vested, if you retire with less than those 5 years, you're only eligible for a refund, and that refund is not going to include the employer match. But once you do have that 5 years of service time under your belt, you are eligible to receive a benefit once you attain retirement age. And when we talk about retirement age, it's important to note that here at NPERS, to us, retirement age is the age you have attained when you start getting your benefit. So we don't care when you stop working. We care how old you are the day you start getting that check from us. And your age is going to determine whether you get a full unreduced benefit or if you take it a little bit early, if there's going to be a benefit reduction. So I want to talk quickly here about the two ways to receive an unreduced benefit. The first way is the easiest way to explain. In your plan, normal retirement age is 65. So if you've reached the age of 65 and you're vested, you can retire at any time with a full unreduced benefit. Full stop. That's the easy way. Normal retirement age is 65. The other way to attain an unreduced benefit in your plan is called the Rule of 85. And the Rule of 85 for tiers 1, 2, and 3 states that once you reach the minimum age of 55, from that point forward, if your age plus years of service equals 85 or greater, you can retire at that time with a full unreduced benefit. Tier 4 also has the Rule of 85, but you have to attain the minimum age of 60 in order to use the Rule of 85 there with Tier 4. So that's the other way to get that benefit, that unreduced benefit. You don't, be careful not to conflate these two. They are not. You do not have to meet both of these conditions in order to retire. It's either or. Once you attain the age of 65 and you're vested, you don't need to worry about the Rule of 85 anymore. You can retire at any time with that full unreduced benefit. Now, when we are figuring the Rule of 85, I mentioned this briefly before, but we do look at your partial service credit along with your partial age. So what we mean by that is if you get to the end of the school year and you are at 29 and a half years of service credit and you are 55 and a half years old, well, that adds up to 85. So we use your partial age along with your partial service credit when figuring for that rule. It's like literally the only time your half birthday matters except for when you're like 6 years old. So that's how to get an unreduced benefit. But what if that's you're never going to meet either of those conditions, right? Maybe you're 60 years old, you have 10 years of service credit, and you're ready to be done and start getting your benefit. 60 plus 10 is 70, it's not 85, and you haven't reached that full retirement age yet. Well, under your plan, you are eligible to take benefits between the ages of 60 and 64 if you would like to, but there is going to be a reduction, and that reduction is 3% for every year you're under the age of 65. So in that example I just gave you, our member who was 60 years old with 10 years of service credit, when they retired, when they start taking their benefit, we are going to figure out what their benefit would be with that formula. And then we are going to take that amount that we come up with and take 15% off the top of that benefit. And we're going to take that 15% for the lifetime of the benefit. So that's a benefit reduction. Does that mean it's always a bad thing because of that reduction? You know what? Absolutely not. There's a lot of factors that go into why people choose to retire when they do. It's the best, it's probably the absolute best decision that some people could make. But I do need to let you know that it's there. And so then after you reach those retirement age, you've attained retirement age, the last step of eligibility is establishing your effective date. Your effective date is when the benefits begin, and you do have to establish this effective date. In order to do so, you have to return your correctly completed application into the retirement office. I say correctly completed application because do just go over that thing with a fine-tooth comb when you're filling it out. Make sure I's are dotted, T's are crossed. We do have a lot of benefits that get delayed because paperwork is not filled out correctly. But basically, your effective date of retirement is going to be the first of the month following the occurrence of three things. The first thing is you've terminated employment at all employers, so you no longer work for a Nebraska public school. The second thing is you meet the eligibility requirements. So you've met those age rules, or the age requirements, and you're vested. And then the third thing is your completed application is received by NPERS. So once those three things happen, the first of the month following is going to be your effective date of retirement. Now, it does take about 3 calendar months in order for you to receive your first benefit check. But when you do receive that first benefit check, it will be for all of the money you should have received since your effective date. Now, some people might see something called a preliminary benefit, and what's happening there is it's taking us a little bit longer to get verify all the information we're verifying during those 3 months that it's taking to get your first check. And so if it is taking a little bit longer, NPERS understands everybody has a certain amount of time they can go without receiving money before we start having to look at shady websites about selling a kidney or whatnot. And so what we do is if it is taking longer, we go ahead and figure your benefit based on the information that we have. And we start sending that out to you. And then once we have all the information that we need, we recalculate that benefit and get you fully up to speed. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about here before we give you a break is the COLA. COLA stands for Cost of Living Adjustment, and it is a really nice feature of your benefit. It's an annual adjustment that occurs every July automatically here in the retirement office. You do not need to apply for it, but it's a benefit increase that's based on the annual change in the Consumer Price Index. Basically, it's a increase based on inflation. Tier 1 has a different COLA than tiers 2, 3, or 4. So let's talk about the tier 1. If you're under tier 1, the maximum increase that you're eligible for starting in your July check is 2.5%. So let's say inflation was calculated at 1% for the year using the CPI. That means that when July rolled around, you'd be eligible for a 1% increase in your July check. But maybe inflation was higher that year. Maybe inflation was like this year where it's higher, it's more like 7.5%. Well, in that scenario, you would receive the maximum 2.5% for your increase. Now, in that scenario, you have lost, though, even though we replaced 2.5% of that 7.5%, you've still lost about 5% of your purchasing power, right? Your dollar is worth 5% less than it was the year before because of we only replaced a third of the 7.5% that it had lost. Well, that's something that we keep track of here in the retirement office. And there's a state statute that says that you have to maintain at least 75% of your original purchasing power throughout the lifetime of your benefit. So if at any time your purchasing power were to dip below where you had lost more than 25% over the lifetime of your benefit, the year when that threshold is reached, you would receive the full CPI increase, which in that example I just gave would be you get a full 7.5%. So that's the tier 1 COLA. Tiers 2, 3, and 4 also have a COLA, but they have a maximum increase of 1%, and there is no 75% purchasing power provision with the COLA there for tiers 2, 3, and 4. But that's the COLA, and again, that's there to help you maintain your purchasing power throughout your retirement years.
My name is Heather Critchfield Smith, and I'm the Education Services Manager. And we're here to talk about your plan. I know you had a nice hour last time talking about kind of the basics about how the plan works and kind of what things you can do, like buying service. We're going to get into a couple other things this next few hours, like reemployment, annuities, and things like that. So to start off, I've been here with NPERS for about 12 years, like Jeremy said, and I started in the mailroom. So I worked there for a couple years, and then I moved to our data services team and did that. They enter in all your beneficiary designations, your taxes, your direct deposits, things like that. And then I worked for the processing team. So I've processed annuity payments and benefits. I've worked on deaths. I've done, customer service for our accounts, things like that. It gives me a unique perspective on kind of how things roll through the process and kind of what we can do. So I hope to be able to impart some of that experience to you today. Um, with that said, I see a lot of really successful retirements. People who go into retirement, they're happy, they've made great decisions, they put a lot of thought into it. I've seen a lot of unsuccessful retirements. I am not a financial planner. I don't have the education nor certification to give you advice about what to do with your money. People who are really good at that, they have those things. You pay them to do that. Me, I have a lot of opinions, so they're free. You don't pay for them. Take them for what they're worth. But if I have tips and tricks and things that have made successful retirements, I'm definitely going to offer those up to you. You take it just like we're talking to a friend, okay? So basically, with that said, this plan, the plan that you have with us, is what is called a 401A. And that's the IRS coding for the type of money that's in this account. Okay, we follow a lot of different rules and regulations and laws about how to administer these plans. There's a lot of rules and hoops to jump through, and we know that. The IRS, how they code that basically is the rules that they tell us for what can and can't be done with this type of money. Okay, so if you want to, take something with you, I would write down 401A, and then you can kind of, if you like to read the IRS website, feel free to go there and become a little bit more informed about the rules that apply to your account. Um, how a 401A works is just like this, and this is really boiled down, okay? So very oversimplified. What happens is you have money, contributions that come out of your check, okay? That 9.78%, the employer match, the state match, it all comes in to this account, okay? Then there's some growth. And then when you get payments in retirement, those payments are taxed at that point in time. Okay, because the contributions that you put in, those are put in pre-tax, tax deferred, tax qualified. All three of those mean the same thing. You haven't paid tax on that money yet. So when you get payments in retirement, those are taxed in some way, shape, or form. Anytime money from this account comes to you. Okay? And depending on what you do with that, can be a little bit different types of taxation. Most people are going to end up taking a benefit, and that's taxed a lot like income is now, since Jeremy talked about that earlier. Okay, so one of those things that people go into retirement with that helps them have a very sound and safe retirement is a tax strategy. Okay, and that's just a basic understanding of how payments that come to you in retirement are going to be taxed, like when that's going to happen. Because if you know when that's going to happen, then you can kind of set that up to be the most advantageous to you and your situation. Like, and this is kind of a common sense thing, but I didn't think about it at all until I started doing this. Um, are you going to be making the same amount of money in retirement that you're making currently? Well, the answer is no, probably not. At least most of us won't be. Okay. So maybe receiving payments at that time when you're retired is going to be okay because perhaps you'll be in a lower tax bracket at that point in time. So receiving payments at that point would mean that they're taxed a little bit better than if they're taxed now when they're, accounted for in your income, right? There you go. Um, little things like that can help you have just a better idea of, your financial plan and how to keep more money in your pocket. Okay, that's the name of the game with retirement planning, keeping more of your own money in your pocket. So there you go with that one. 401A, kind of how that works. The reason that I talk about taxation a little bit here is because the next thing that I'm going to talk about on this slide that you're seeing right now is required minimum distribution. Okay. Now, the IRS has like a hard and fast golden rule about this type of account, this retirement account that we've got. And that is you cannot take funds from this account until you terminate employment. That sounds a little easy to do, but we're going to talk about reemployment here for, a couple slides down the road. So let's not get ahead of ourselves on that one. You have to terminate employment before you can take funds from this account. That's rule number one. Rule number two, at a certain point in time, if you haven't taken funds from your retirement account, then the government's going to make you. Essentially, the IRS says, hey, we want you to take some money out of this account. Mainly, we want you to take it out of there so that we can get taxes on that money. Okay? So if you haven't taken money from your account at a certain age, they're going to require you to take a distribution. That's the required minimum distribution. Okay? Most people are not going to be affected by this. Most people will take their funds prior to their RMD age. And the RMD age has just changed recently, like December of 2022. We had the Secure Act that passed, and they had changes to the RMD ages in that. Okay, you can see from this table that we have up here, we've tried to simplify this as much as possible. So we put it on here using your date of birth. Most people, at least I do, on a good day, remember our date of birth. Okay, so this will tell you what your RMD age is. Now, if you intend to take your money prior to this age, you're going to be okay. But you know, we all know that lady at our school. She comes in 30 minutes early every single day of her life. She's been there for 50 years. She has no intention of leaving. She enjoys it. Okay, and she is working way, way past her RMD age. Okay, that is okay because if you remember the first rule, you have to terminate employment for this to affect you because you can't take money out if you're still employed. But the moment that this person who is working past their RMD age terminates employment, they're kind of on the fast track to take their money by a certain point in time. Okay. And we know that these deadlines can be, it's a lot. When you get close to retirement, you're dealing with a lot of different things. So we made a handout, and Jeremy's put the RMD handout in the chat box there. So if you need to access that handout, please do. It lists the time frames that you need to be aware of for taking your money. Because if you don't, if you miss your RMD deadline for this, there are some consequences, okay? Now, consequence number one, if you miss your RMD deadline, is the fact most RMDs are going to be approximately about 3 to 5% of your account balance. Okay, 3 to 5% of your account balance. So you've got that number. You're thinking about what 3 to 5% of your entire account balance is, right? Now, if you miss your RMD, the penalty that goes straight to the IRS is 25% of that amount that is the RMD. So 3 to 5% of your account, and now 25% of that just gone as a penalty. Now, that does not suit our goals of keeping more of our own money in our pocket, right? So we need to be aware what those timelines are so that we don't fail to take our RMD on time. Okay? The second of these consequences is even more of a big deal because this is a defined benefit plan, meaning the real great part about it, the real treasure about this retirement plan is that lifetime benefit that it's going to provide you. Now, if you miss your RMD, like when you're supposed to take that, you can miss out on your opportunity to take a lifetime monthly benefit under this plan. That's important, so I'm going to say it one more time. If you miss taking your RMD, you can miss out on the opportunity to take a monthly lifetime benefit under this plan. And that's a huge deal. Okay, so really understand when you have to take these and what has to be done in order to get this completed. Okay, like I said, we know it's complicated, so we made you a handout. You need to click on that, read it, and understand it. And if you still don't understand after that, that's why we have a member services center. You call, you ask the questions that need to be asked. Okay? All right. RMDs are nothing to be too excited about. They're nothing that should cause you anxiety or anything like that, but they are important. And we want to make sure people don't lose money because they didn't get their timing right. And that's essentially kind of what that is. All right. So that's RMDs. The next thing that we're going to talk about with this plan is literally my favorite thing to talk about with this plan, and that's the benefit payment options. Okay. I love talking about the benefit payment options because there is so many good options here. One of these is going to be perfect for you and your financial situation. That's just plain and simple. But if you take one thing away from this webinar today, just one, I want it to be this. Every single option that I'm about to discuss with you, every single one, is going to provide you, the member, a check every month for the rest of your life. People tend to understand how Social Security works and the fact that a Social Security payment will last for the rest of their life. But somehow, most of the time, we do have people who are like, well, I don't understand. When is this going to end? No, if you're the member here, every single option that I'm going to talk about will provide you with a payment for the rest of your life. Okay, so what you're doing is establishing an income stream for yourself. This can run in conjunction with Social Security. Okay, now that we've established the important thing that every single one of these is going to pay you for the rest of your life every single month, you're asking yourself, well, what's the big difference in between all of these options? Well, I'm glad you asked. What's the big difference here? It's whether there's going to be a death benefit paid under this and how that happens. That's it. Okay? So let's talk about life only. I'm a rather simple gal. I like things that are exactly what they say they are. Kind of helps me to understand things better. And life only is just one of those things. It's, it is exactly what it says it is. So it's a payment for your life only. When you end, it ends. There is no death benefit payment under this. You don't even get to put a beneficiary down if you choose this option because there's nothing to pay to them. You're saying you want a payment for your life only. Okay? Now, with that said, sometimes this scenario can play out, and it does. You have somebody who puts into the plan for 30 years. Okay, they've put in for 30 years, 30 good years, and they establish their effective date. Okay, and Jeremy told you what you need to do to establish your effective date. Do you remember what it was? First of all, you've got to meet your age and vesting requirements. Okay, second, you need to terminate employment because the IRS says you can't take money out of a plan until you've terminated. And third, you have to get your completed application into NPERS, and it needs to be completed correctly. Okay? Once you've done all three of those things, you establish an effective date. And that effective date is the date that you want to get paid. So our scenario goes, you put in 30 years of payments, you've done your three things to establish your effective date. Okay? So the next thing that happens, hooray, retirement. You start getting payments. Okay? And let's say you're on your second month. Okay? Your second month of payments. And this is going great for you. You love retirement. And so you are headed out to that mailbox to get your second monthly benefit check because what's going to happen is you're going to take that check down to the bait shop and you're going to spend all weekend at the lake. And you are excited. And this is fishing. It's going to be great. So you go to the mailbox to get your check and super excited, and maybe you're not paying attention. Maybe you don't realize exactly how close to the road that mailbox actually is. And maybe you get hit by well, in the school seminars we say school bus, but that's no offense to any of the great bus drivers in the state of Nebraska, and we got a lot of them. So there you go. You get hit by a school bus. If you have the life only option, then your payment is done. And yes, you only received 2 monthly checks, but that is kind of the risk that you run taking this option. Okay. Now, inevitably during the seminars, we always have somebody that runs up to me and goes, Heather, that happened to one of my friends in real life. Don't you think that's terrible? Well, yes, of course, I think that's terrible. I'm not really allowed to have an opinion about it, but I do. Um, but that's how these play out. Okay. And they say, well, don't you think it's terrible they put in for 30 years? What happened to their money? Well, I'm glad you asked. What happened to their money is this. When you put into the plan your contributions, the interest that's on there, the employer match, the state, portion of that, it all goes into a big bucket. And that great big bucket is institutionally invested on your behalf by the Nebraska Investment Council. Okay. And they have a very sound plan that's worked for our plans for a really long time. And every once a year, the actuaries will come over and take a look inside that bucket and go, oh, well, your plan is funded to this level. Okay, and then they tell us that number, and we put it in all of our legislative reports and we let you know. But what it boils down to is that is how well funded the plan is. And I know what the number is because we write the legislative report. But essentially, it went from in 2022, 97.4% up to 98.4% funded. And you're like, Heather, why do I care about that? Well, you care about it because that funding level is an assessment of how strong the plan is, how healthy the plan is, how much we're going to be able to keep our promises. When you fill out that application, you sign a financial contract with us. And when we say we're going to make a monthly lifetime payment to you, that's what that funding assures. Okay? So 98.4%, I can tell you every state has a PERS, and that's pretty darn good. National average is something like 72% funded. Okay. And in a day and age when we're actually having to have conversations about the solvency of large retirement plans and programs like Social Security, this should be a little bit of peace of mind for you that when we say we're going to pay you, we pay you. Okay. So that's what happens. Some people who pick like options will be the victims of probability. Okay. Because that's how retirement financial planning works. You're making a guess. You're making an educated guess about how long you think you're going to live and how much money you need to sustain that. Okay? So sometimes those things happen. That's how the life only option works. When you end, it ends. Okay? But that scenario that I just told you about, for some people, that's a big deal. And they just couldn't even stand it if they took an option that didn't at least provide something, that they put in for so long, didn't get anything. Um, if that's you, you might want to check out the modified cash refund option that we're going to talk about now. With modified cash, how that one works, and this is the one where Jeremy was talking about on the estimator, you have to put in your account balance because this is the only option or time it really matters. Okay. With modified cash, it ensures that you get out of the plan at the very least what you put into it. Okay. So this is how it works. You establish your effective date, and I'm only going to do this one more time, I assure you. In order to establish your effective date, you meet your age and vesting requirements, you terminate employment, and you get your completed application into us. And the first of the month following that, you've established your effective date. With modified cash, at that point in time, what we're going to do is look at your account balance, okay? And we keep track of that number. And then you start to receive monthly benefit payments. Hey, enjoy retirement. And we keep track of that number. Okay. And when you pass away during this payment period, we look back and we go, okay, that account balance started with this number. And we subtract from that the number of payments that you've received, what you've received in benefits. Okay. And if anything is left, It's paid right out to your beneficiary. Okay? So let's do a numbers example on that one. Numbers help me to kind of understand things a little bit better sometimes. Let's say that I start out with $60,000 in my account. That's my contributions and interest when I establish my effective date. And I start to receive payments, hooray, and I get $10,000 in payments. Now, if I pass away at that point in time, what they're going to look at is that $60,000 minus $10,000 equals $50,000 that would be paid out approximately to my beneficiary designated on file. Okay? That's how modified cash works. Now, with that, sometimes it happens like this, where you start out with $60,000, that's your account balance, and then you receive in retirement something like $110,000 in benefit payments. If you passed away at that point in time, would there be anything to pay to your beneficiary designated on file? No, because you've overcome that initial amount that was your contributions and interest. Now, it's the annuity is still going to pay you every single month for the rest of your life. Remember, that's what we started out with. That was so important. But if you've overcome that initial amount, there is no longer a death benefit to be paid under that option. Okay? All right. The next one we're going to talk about is the period, certain, and continuous options. And with these options, you get to pick when you pick the option on your application, which one you want, either a 5, 10, or 15-year option. Okay? But I don't want you to think about this in terms of years. I want you to think about this in terms of monthly benefit payments. How many monthly benefit payments would there be in 5 years? 60. There would be 60 monthly payments. So for 10 years, that's 120 monthly payments. And for 15 years, that's 180 monthly payments. How this one works, you pick your certain period, and that is the period during which a death benefit is going to be paid. But what happens is you start to receive payments, okay? Those payments start as soon as your certain period is going to start. So the month you get your first benefit payment, your certain period starts at that point in time, okay? And you go along and you receive monthly payments. And if you pass away, then we look at how many monthly payments you received, and if there are any monthly payments remaining in that certain period, they're paid to your beneficiary designated on file. So let's look at this one as a numbers example. Are you ready? If we have a 60 payment period, that's a 5-year, and I'm going along and I receive 48 monthly payments, and then I pass away, how many monthly payments remaining in that period would be paid to my beneficiary designated on file? 12, the last year of payments. So for the last 12 months, my beneficiary designated on file would receive a payment. Okay. Now, with that said, if I have a 5-year and that's 60 monthly payments, and then I receive 75 monthly payments and pass away, there would be nothing to pay to my beneficiary designated on file because I'm outside of that certain period that I picked that would be, there to pay a death benefit. But don't forget the continuous part of this, because I know somebody who picked the 15-year. And I'm going to tell you, they took in with them something to retirement that I think everybody should take in with them. That is a goal. When you sit down and you look at your big financial picture, it's good to make a goal for your retirement, something you want to achieve, something that maybe this plan itself is going to satisfy for you. When you make that goal, it's important. It's something for you to continue to focus on. The person that I know in this story, they picked the 15-year option because when they went into retirement, they had a goal for this plan. It was going to make sure that their mortgage could be paid off. Okay. When they went into retirement, they carried 15 years left on that mortgage, and it was important to them that it be paid off. So they chose this 15-year option because they ran their estimates, and the estimates on this not only would satisfy that time period during which they were making payments, but that monthly amount satisfied the mortgage amount that they were paying. Okay. So they took the 15-year, and I'm going to tell you, this person actually ended up paying the house off themselves. They were really excited about that and tell pretty much anybody they can catch to tell. But they also lived 13 years past that period during which that death benefit would have been paid. So this person, and the reason I get to tell you this story is because it was my grandma, and she used this to satisfy that goal. But my family has something called the curse of longevity. And she, honestly, it was great the fact that she was still receiving a monthly payment when she was 98. Um, that's one of these great comforting things that this benefit, that this retirement plan gives to you, is that you will still receive a payment every month for the rest of your life, even if you're outside of that time period or you've overcome your initial amount and there would be no death benefit payment. Still a check. Okay. Now, with modified cash and period certain, these options also offer you something called beneficiary flexibility. Now, you notice when I describe the options, I would always say a payment would go to your beneficiary designated on file, right? It's termed that way for an important reason, because with this, it's going to be paid to who you designate as your beneficiary. And with beneficiary flexibility, you can change your beneficiary after you've started to receive payments. To some people, that may be very important. Maybe down the road of 3 or 4 years, you'll want to change those beneficiaries. Life happens. You never can tell. But you have to have beneficiary flexibility to be able to do that. Beneficiary flexibility also makes it so that people can have an entity on there if they wish, something like a church or a charity to receive money from this plan. Sometimes that's pretty important to them. If you'd like to have multiple beneficiaries, let's say you want it to be your 10 grandkids or your 3 nieces and nephews, you can do that. But you have to have beneficiary flexibility in order for you to be able to do that. Okay? Modified cash and the period certain and continuous options allow you beneficiary flexibility. And the reason that I stop and talk about beneficiary flexibility here is because it's a good opportunity to kind of go back over what we've already talked about. Life only, you don't get a beneficiary because there is no death benefit payout. Okay? Modified cash and period certain options, you get beneficiary flexibility. You're going to fill out a beneficiary designation form when you retire, when you establish your effective date and choose one of these options. Okay, the next two benefit options, benefit payment options that we're going to talk about do not offer you any kind of beneficiary flexibility. Both of these next two options are going to tie you with one beneficiary. And I'm not talking about like you get a primary beneficiary, get a content, one beneficiary. That's it. Okay. So who do you think might be your beneficiary that you're tied in there with on the joint and survivor options? Well, that's right. It's your spouse. And more importantly, it's the spouse that you're married to at the time that you establish your effective date. And if she says it like that, it's important. What I mean is, when we do the calculations for this annuity, you will tell us, yes, I would like my spouse to be my beneficiary on this one. And how it works you also get to pick a percentage. And that percentage that you pick is the percentage of your monthly benefit that would be paid to your spouse for the rest of their life when you pass away. So numbers example on this one real quick. Let's say that I have the joint and survivor 75%, okay? And my monthly benefit is $1,000 a month. What's going to happen is I'm going along and get $1,000 and I pass away. Well, that means that my spouse would receive 75% of my benefit, so $750 a month for the rest of his lifetime. Okay? And the reason that you are kind of tied with that one beneficiary is because when we do the calculations for this annuity, their age and mortality tables are a factor in that calculation because we're not only looking at the probability for you and paying a lifetime benefit for you, we're also looking at that probability of a lifetime monthly payment going to your spouse. Okay, so that's just important to keep in mind that their age and mortality tables are a factor. When I said that you don't get to change your beneficiary on this one, you really kind of don't. Let's say your spouse predeceases you, meaning dies before you. You don't get to add a new beneficiary onto this, even if you get remarried. It's based on that first spouse that was there when you established your effective date. Okay? So we'll still pay you, the member, check every month for the rest of your life, but there would be no beneficiary on this anymore. Okay? If your spouse predeceased you. Another thing that can happen every once in a while is sometimes you might be facing a divorce scenario. If that's the case, you'd want to give a call into the office. Sometimes things happen with retirements and divorce where we might need to see the divorce decree or the qualified domestic relations order that goes along with that. That's a quadro. There is specific language that needs to be in some of this. So if you do have a scenario like that, you might want to give a call into the office. Okay, we deal with that on a fairly regular basis. There are specialists that handle it. Okay, so that is the joint and survivor option. Now, the next one we're going to talk about is the non-spousal joint and survivor option. And with the non-spousal, it's only 1%. You don't get to pick the percentage on this one. That's what I'm trying to put forth. You don't get to pick the percentage. It's only 50% of your benefit. But what you do get to pick on this is who your beneficiary is. You get one. But the criteria for that is that it can be almost anyone. It just has to be one living human being. That's it. One living human being. And the reason I say it like that is very simple because it cannot be a trust. It has to be one living human being. Okay. And because of that 50% that's on here, how it works is just like this. Let's say I'm still getting $1,000, like my previous example. Okay. And we're going along and I pass away. My non-spousal joint survivor, the beneficiary that I picked, is going to get 50% of my benefit. So they would get $500 a month for the rest of their lifetime. Okay. And with this one, I find that the non-spousal joint survivor, a lot of people seem to choose that one if they're trying to do some special needs planning for an individual who might need to have an income provided by them for the rest of their life. There's all sorts of good, scenarios where this is going to play out to be the best option for people. But that's one I see fairly consistently where this one works. Another thing you kind of have to consider on this one, particularly with the joint survivor and non-spousal joint survivor, is when you do planning, we have to consider sometimes that our spouse or the person that we pick as the beneficiary might be okay with 50%. Um, Particularly with the joint survivor, that comes up a lot where everybody's like, why would you pick that? Don't you love your spouse? Um, Sometimes it's not about that. Every once in a while, our spouse might be receiving, life-giving government aid, and having a huge death benefit or a big lump sum dropped upon them might kick them off of this government aid that they've been receiving, that's really very practical and needed for them. When you do financial planning and stuff like that, you have to take into consideration some of these things and how that might play out in your individual scenario. Okay. Like I said, every single one of these options can be used in conjunction with Social Security, in conjunction with the rest of your retirement plan that you have going on, but you have to know them and kind of understand what you want to accomplish with this retirement plan and what it can do for you. And hopefully this discussion of how those benefit payment options work gives you a little bit better idea of what might work for you. Now, we're getting real close to the top of the hour, so what I'm going to do is take questions. If you have questions about these benefit payment options, you should be asking them in the Q&A box, please. Okay? What we're going to do then is we're going to do a little bit of a numbers thing. So I'm going to show you some numbers to go along with this, and then we'll take a break. Okay? We ran some estimates, and you should too. I encourage everybody to run estimates. Jeremy did a great discussion where he went over the benefit estimator, and we put that out there absolutely for you. But we ran it a couple of times to show you what these options look like. We ran it for a tier 1 member. So when that box dropped down and asked us for our 3 highest salaries, we put in $35,000 on all those. Okay. Then we ran it for somebody who is normal retirement age. Normal retirement age in your plan is 65. So we gave them 20 years of service. And these are the monthly amounts that that benefit estimator gave to us. That's what the estimator will give to you, a monthly amount for that option. Okay, so you can see, you can make plans. Some people will even like, Heather, can I get a good idea maybe of what my taxes might be like? Yes, take this amount times 12. That's what we'd give you in a year. Um, but these are estimates, they're guesses. Okay, so you can see life only is almost always the highest amount. That's because it's got a 0 probability of a death benefit payout on it. Okay, we use $60,000 as our account balance, so modified cash looks like that. But you can see it's not much different from, life only. Sometimes these options and the payments that they will be monthly, they're going to be pretty close. So you have to decide what you want. Okay, you can see that probability of a death benefit play out here a little bit more with the period certain continuous. As that probability increases, or the time horizon increases, let's say for 15 years, that's going to be a little bit less per month than if we only have to pay a death benefit for 5 years. Okay? So, same thing goes for if we're going to pay 100% of your benefit to your spouse or 50%. But the amount that you're going to see that's generated by the estimator, that is your monthly amount. So if you want to know what your spouse would get, you simply take 50% of that or 75% of that amount. As I mentioned, age is a factor with the calculation of both joint and survivor and non-spousal. And so we ran the estimates and put in somebody who was 20 years younger than us in that box for the non-spousal. And that also affects the monthly amount. Okay. In the second column, we ran it for someone and we said reduced. The reason that we said reduced on this one is because we ran it for somebody who is age 60. Now remember, you can claim your benefit at age 60 if you want to, but what you're also seeing here is the full brunt of that 15% reduction for age. So it can be significant, but like I said, is it always a bad thing? No, not always a bad thing at all. Sometimes it's a great choice for people. Uh, I know plenty of people that have taken their benefit prior to age 65 and have not met Rule of 85 and are still receiving benefits, and it's a good choice for them. I just don't know if it's a good choice for you. Okay, so there you go. Now, I'm also going to remind you of something real quick. Uh, Nothing says that after you terminate employment with your employer, you have to come and get your money from the retirement office. You don't. This person in the second column, sure, maybe they terminated employment at their school, but every year that they wait to take their money, they're going to get 3% extra in that monthly amount until they reach age 65, which is normal retirement. And then, column two is going to look just like column one. So if you'd like to wait to take your money, you certainly can. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay. The last column says somebody who meets rule of 85. Okay. So it's somebody who's age 55 with 30 years of extra service credit. And you're seeing here, oh my goodness, those amounts are quite a bit more, even though the first column is an unreduced benefit. Now, is that because this person met the rule of 85? Well, yes and no. Rule of 85 was only ever, put out there for people to have early access to an unreduced benefit. What you're really seeing on this one illustrated is that 10 extra years of service credit makes a big difference. And it makes a difference in the dollars and cents you're going to get. So when we tell you to assess your annual statement and make sure that what's on there is correct, this is why we tell you that, because it makes sense to you in dollars and cents, just very plainly. So this is kind of what these estimates look like. Now, these are not your personal estimates. You need to go and get those done. But I want to kind of move on because I don't want to try and get you too much past lunch, okay? So choosing a benefit payment option. Every single one of these is going to be perfect for somebody. Knowing your personal financial situation is going to be how you pick, okay? And that can involve quite a few things. What I want you to do, this is your homework. I want you to go home and take a look at your personal financial picture tonight. And how you do that is you get that folder. You know that old folder that's got all your important financial documents in it, and you spread it out on the kitchen table or the coffee table or the breakfast bar, wherever you do this. And take a good hard look at the numbers. How much debt do you have? What's your debt to income ratio? Do you understand how that functions? Do you have investment accounts that you plan to run in conjunction with your Social Security and retirement plan? Have you put beneficiaries on those? Because you can. Any type of investment or brokerage account, you can put beneficiaries on that, and you should. Our plan, how long has it been since you looked at your beneficiaries? Do you know who they are? Life insurance. What are your life insurance needs at this point in time, and what are they going to be in retirement? A lot of the time, making future plans can be super difficult because we are in a very present day mind state. So we're not thinking about how we're going to live, what we're going to do. We're thinking about getting there. Okay. But we need to assess some of these needs that we're going to have during that point in time. Another thing that people have to consider, what type of lifestyle do you want to have in retirement? Are you one of those people that wants to be a snowbird, that you're, leaving the state as soon as it gets cold, but you come right back when it's nice? There's things to consider. You can have that lifestyle. You have to plan for it. You need to make sure your finances are there to support that. I have a very cheap retirement plan. I'll give it to you. You can have it if you want it. I plan on, finding a very specific tree and a very specific bathrobe and learning to paint under that tree. That's what I want to do with my retirement. It's a cheap plan, but it's what I want to do. You have things that you know you're going to want to do. Make sure that you have the money there to take care of that. Another thing that really has to be considered in this day and age is, how's your health? Um, do you have family medical histories that you need to be considering in making these long-term decisions? On my mom's side of the family, I've got, cholesterol, heart attacks, diabetes. Okay. On my dad's side, I've got cancers all the way up and down. I have to take into consideration these things when I make my long-term plans. How much of a probability is it going to that I need to be treated for one thing or the other? If you're making decisions like that, we are guessing. These are nothing more than educated guesses. However, if we plan, and the better we plan for these things, the happier we're going to be. The happier your family is going to be, particularly if you're sitting down and looking at important things like, do you have power of attorney documents? Do you have a financial power of attorney or a health power of attorney? These are needed documents. Do you have a will? Have you sat down to look at that? I'm going to tell you, the poorest person that I knew as a family member, um, they said, we don't need a will. I have nothing of value. Why would I need a will? And then they passed away. And let me tell you, there were things that they had never even considered that were valuable that needed to have planning, death planning done on them, that literally took my family personally months and months and months to sort out. Do the planning right now while you're alive and can make some decisions about this stuff, because anything that you do, even little things, they make it easier for these grieving family members and individuals who are left behind and must take care of these things. Okay, so I always tell people just even a little bit of planning on this one is going to help everybody. If you need a death benefit, if you don't, you know, that's what you're considering as far as these payment options and what to do with this plan. Financial planning's interesting. This is where I talk about financial planners. I love a good financial planner. I've worked with a lot of them before, actually, and I will never, ever disparage someone's ability to make money on something they're good at. Okay? And most financial planners, they're worth every dime that you pay them. Okay? But you need to make sure that that financial planner's goals and yours align. If you have a financial planner who is not a fiduciary, so not real invested in you being successful in your retirement, then they could be selling you products for a commission that you don't understand. And that's how a lot of these retirement horror stories that I hear start. But it's your responsibility as both a consumer and as somebody who's getting ready to retire to understand how fees work. Okay? This is going to help you be more successful in retirement. That's another tip and trick from somebody who's seen it. Yeah. So I am going to give you some free financial planning advice, even though I am not a financial planner. I do follow a lot of trends. I read a lot of books. I do a lot of research on retirement planning and finance. And at this point in time, this day and age, a financial planner is going to try and get you to 80 to 85% income replacement in retirement. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means think about what you're making now, okay, as far as your income. Now, think of what 80% of that is, because statistically, that's what everybody says you should be able to live comfortably on in retirement. 85 to 80% of what you make now. And the way that they do that, well, the way a financial planner would do that, is that they would essentially try and establish income streams. Annuities are income streams. They are things like Social Security, they're things like the benefit options in our plan, annuity payments, an income stream. And what they're trying to do is get you up to that 80 to 85% replacement. Okay? So with Social Security, let's just say, let's just say that Social Security is going to pay on the high end for us. Now we know that Social Security was only ever designed to basically give us back about 35 to 40% of what our income was. Okay, so 35 to 40%. Let's say it gives us 40 for the sake of this example, 40%. And this chart is what we've done to try and help with that as well. Okay, if you know what your years of creditable service are, we can give you kind of a guess about how much this plan would replace for you in retirement. So if I'm getting 40% from Social Security and I know that I have 20 years of creditable service, then I can look at this chart and go, oh, well, the plan's going to replace approximately 40%. Hey, 40 and 40, that's 80. I'm up to 80% salary income replacement in retirement just with those two things. That's not too shabby. That's actually really pretty good. Okay. But, and this happens during in-persons and webinars, there's somebody on the other side of this screen that is just harder to sweat a little bit. Okay. Maybe, maybe they're not getting Social Security for one reason or the other. Maybe they didn't qualify. Maybe they don't have the kind of service credit that they thought they did. Maybe they're not comfortable with the amounts that are being replaced. This happens, okay? Happens a lot. And people will run up to me during these in-person seminars and say, Heather, what do I do? I'm within 5 years. I'm within 5 years of retirement, and I am not in this position that I want to be in. Well, I do have suggestions. Most employers in the state of Nebraska, I'm talking the school employers, have something called a 403B plan. Okay, a 403B plan is a tax-advantaged retirement plan that you can run in conjunction with Social Security in our plan. Okay, it's voluntary, you put money into it, and if you want to know something about it, you have to go to your employer and ask who administers your plan. Okay, because NPERS does not. A 403B is not a plan we administer, so don't call and ask questions about this. But we're here today to get those gears moving in your head. Things you need to consider, things that you need to think about. And if you're not close to where you want to be as far as financing your retirement, you're looking for alternatives. So hopefully that's a good alternative. People ask me, hey, Heather, why don't you just suggest an IRA instead? Well, that's a good idea. I love IRAs. I like traditional IRAs. I like Roth IRAs. I like them. In fact, if you find $5 on the ground and you put it in a jar that's marked retirement, I am still proud of you. Any retirement savings is good retirement savings. Okay? But the reason that I suggest a 403B to people who are panicking at this point and might be close to 5 years to retirement is because those contribution limits for the amount of pre-tax money that you can put into a 403B are much, much higher than an IRA. At this point in time, if you are over age 50 and qualify for some catch-up provisions, you can put approximately $30,000 into a 403B. And if I were panicking and trying to squirrel away money for retirement, I would want to put in as much as I can. Now, with an IRA, the contribution limits for an IRA this year are something like 7 grand. Okay, so it's about $7,000 for both, and so that's why I suggest the 403B instead of an IRA. If you have them, great. That's amazing. If you want to start an IRA now, do it. Like I said, any retirement savings is good, but this is how you do some planning. This is how you think about these things. You go, okay, this will replace this much of my income. This will replace this much of my income. This is the things that I have in conjunction with that. Okay? So that's about where I stop talking about the benefit options and how to make your own financial plan. If you have questions about things like that, I'm just not seeing any questions in that Q&A, you guys. It's starting to make me real nervous, okay? Like I'm a good presenter, but I'm not that good. So make sure you're asking questions about this stuff. We're going to move on, okay? This is a big, scary slide, but what it really means, essentially, is, hey, please keep your address up to date with us. And this is not, we're not talking to someone who is currently employed. If you're currently employed with a, school employer that participates in the plan, they are giving us your address and information when they post contributions, okay? But once you establish your effective date, and start receiving your benefit, if you move someplace, you need to let us know. Because most of the time, your benefit's going to be directly deposited. And so you're going to think, well, everything's still running smoothly. Why would I need to keep my address up with you? Good question. Um, if we receive two pieces of mail that are returned to us as undeliverable or something like that, we will suspend your benefit. And the reason for that, just very simply, is the fact that it's easier for us to restart someone's benefit than it is to reclaim funds from someone who is deceased. Okay? And if you move and you don't tell us, then how are we supposed to know? Now, we're not those people who are going to try and like call you and chat you up because we haven't heard from you in forever. We try not to bother you if we can help it. But there are important things that we need to be able to mail to you. Your 1099-R at the end of the year is one of them. Another one is your COLA letter in the summertime so that we can tell you what that cost of living adjustment was. So that when your benefit payment is different the next month, you know why. Okay? These are just a couple things. But anyway, the whole point of this, just keep your address up to date with us. If you move, write down, hey, my new address is this, sign it, and send it in. That's all we ask, okay? Not a big deal. Now, we're going to talk about this year's hot button issue. I hope you are ready. The IRS says that you have to do one thing to take money out of your retirement account. What is it, guys? You must terminate employment. You must cease working. You must retire. You must stop working. Okay? Those all mean the same thing. You're done. You stop working. And then you can take funds from your retirement. In fact, the IRS is so nitpicky about this that they actually give us a definition of what that means to them. Okay? And it means that you have 180 calendar day break from service. Okay? So you have your last day, whatever it is, your termination date. And that starts your 180 calendar day break that you need to have. When we talk about reemployment, I'm talking about sometimes people will cease employment, try and take their benefit, and then come back and work at that same school that they just left. You can't do that. That is literally the definition of reemployment. Okay. And when we talk about this, I want to give you some caveats. Okay. When I talk about this, I'm talking about people who leave and come back to a school that participates in the Nebraska School Retirement Plan. Okay. But we all know that a lot of these schools in Nebraska participate in this plan. I mean, almost all of them except for OPS. So when you think about it, you can't go work for another school because technically it's the same employer. There are a few things that are not the same. If you terminate employment with your school, wherever it is, and then decide to go work privately, like at Walmart, or go be the best barista you could possibly be at Starbucks, do it. Have fun. Go. That's private employment. That's not what we're talking about. When we talk about reemployment, it's coming back to an employer that participates in the plan. Okay? But if you want to go work privately, great. Have fun. Do it. Take your benefit. Enjoy retirement. Even though you're earning money from another job someplace else. That's fine. This is a specific topic about coming back into the plan. If you'd like to go work for parochial schools, you can totally do that. Most parochial schools do not participate in the plan. Like Pius Catholic school, another lovely Lutheran school. There are plenty of wonderful parochial schools you could go and work at if you wanted to. That's not what I'm talking about here. OPS, they are special. They have their own plan. So they don't participate in the Nebraska School retirement plan. You could go work up there. But you can't come back. You have to have that 180-day calendar break in service for the IRS to go, oh yeah, they quit. So we know that a lot of the schools in Nebraska are suffering. The unicameral knows this as well. So last year, they gave us a, what was it, LB 147, which is now called the Substitute and Voluntary Service Exception. This was great. Everybody in our office jumped up and down when we got this. We were so excited because all we ever heard on the road was, we're having trouble, we can't get staff in here, we're having trouble. And we knew this would help because what it does is it says after you've terminated employment, you can work 8 calendar days per calendar month of that 180 days. So it's 180 days long, right? Every single month of that 180 days, you can provide 8 days of service. Now, they even got a little bit further into the weeds and told you what 8 days of service was. A day of service is any length of time. Okay, whether you run into the school in the summertime to answer the phone, or you go and you do 8 hours of subbing. It's the same. It's 1. So you'd go over to your calendar and you mark, I did 1 on this day. And the reason I tell you to mark it on your calendar is coming up. But I would keep track of my 8 days per month. And I'm going to tell you, that's a big number because if it's 180 days that you have to sit out, then what they've just given you is 48 of those days that you can go back and provide service. We were like, oh my gosh, this is yay! And then we got some pushback, if you could believe it, which is odd. Because that kind of means that people didn't understand what the rules were prior to getting this. And believe me, they were strict. The person that used to do this presenting before me, my old boss essentially, they would ask him at seminars, they would say, hey, John, how many times is it okay to sub during my 180 days? And he would look him in the face and he would say, well, nobody's ever gotten in trouble for 3 times. 3. And what he meant was 3 times during the whole 180 days. So 8 days every single month of the 180 days, that was huge. That was huge. And we're still seeing a lot of people be able to go back and provide that service that they want to, and they're happy about it. So I'm glad that we have this. But of course, since we got new legislation, there's a couple things you can and can't do. You ready? We got to say what you can't do, first of all. You can't combine your subbing and volunteering. So you had 8 days of subbing and 8 days of volunteering during 1 month. That's 16 days. Okay. You can't do 8 days at one school in Nebraska and then do 8 days at another school in Nebraska during the same month. That's 16 days. And the example that I like to give here is kind of a local example for me. You can't do 8 subbing days in Broken Bow, and then during the same month you drive down, Highway 2 and do 8 subbing days in Ansley. That's 16 days. Can't do that. Okay. This is when I usually get tomatoes thrown right at me, if you can believe it, by the administrators, because you cannot agree to train your replacement. This is considered something we call a prearranged return to service. We're going to get into that probably on the next slide. I think it's coming up here. But you can't do it. Okay. And this is where I get eggs thrown at me because eggs are expensive now. Refereeing, officiating, and coaching are considered regular employment, so they do not qualify under this exception. Okay. You can't use your 8 days during that calendar month to provide this type of service. It's considered regular employment. Okay? So I know. Let's talk a little bit about prearranged returns to service. Okay, what a prearranged return to service is, just very simply, is any written or verbal agreement to come back. Okay, or to actually circumvent the 180 days. This one kind of includes things where your school might actually leave a position open for you. If they're doing that, you're taking your money and retiring, and they are leaving a spot open for you. The IRS looks at that and goes, hey, you never had any intent to stop working. And what did we tell you you had to do in order to take money out of your account? You have to stop working. Okay? So that's why all this stuff happens, because it's we understand that you want your money. I get it. But you have to stop working to get that. It's not even our rule. It's the IRS's rule. We're not the bad guys here. In fact, we want you to be able to provide as much service as you can. That's why we work so hard to get this LB 147 through, because we want you to be able to do that. But you got to do it the right way. Okay, so what a prearranged return to service kind of looks like when you see it, most of the time it's somebody who goes, well, you know what, I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna take my benefit, but don't worry, I'll be back to coach track in the spring, because you have no real intent to retire. You've just told somebody you're going to be back. Okay? Don't do that. If you can't retire, don't retire. Stay there. There are many people happily working at schools everywhere. Just continue to work. Now, the reason that I hit this one so hard is because there are consequences to this. Okay? And most of the time, you say, you know, they're going to catch me right away. They'll catch me right away when I come back. Well, I wish that we had uh, uh, the kind of bandwidth to be able to do that. We don't. But these are caught fairly regularly in audit. Okay, somebody who's going back and looking through, you know, the accounts and things like that, and these are where those are found. Okay, now most people are actually going to get out of the plan far more than they ever put into it. Just so you know, my grandma, who was my example a little earlier, and my mom also received a benefit. She put in like $28,000 to the plan total, but she had like 43 years of service credit, okay? And so she got out of the plan in benefits, and she lived to be 98, approximately $650,000, okay? It's a lot. When these are found in audit, most people have been receiving benefits for years, which makes these consequences a little bit more harsh, because what happens is all your benefits are due back to us immediately as a lump sum plus interest, and they become an IRS tax debt, so you don't get to bankrupt your way out from under these. Okay? It's it's a big amount of consequences for doing nothing more than what you feel is right and going back and helping a school that is struggling with staffing needs. We get that. But we have to tell you what the law is. So, if you're considering this, and some people, they might have different scenarios in which it's going to be absolutely okay. But everybody has a scenario. That's the thing. I had a lot of ladies come up to me and go, hey, is it still okay to take tickets? And I was like, well, you can use your 8 days each calendar month of the 180 and still stay safe with that. They said, well, we do a lot more games than 8. And I said, nope, you do 8. Okay, keep it on the straight and narrow. Only provide the service that you can. This is a big deal, because when people come out of compliance with the law, essentially, they pull the plan out of compliance. It's never just one person. They pull the plan out of compliance. And worst case scenario here is that the IRS could walk in here and go, well, we see that you've been doing this on the regular, so we're going to pull your tax determination letter. which means that you no longer have a tax-qualified retirement plan. So not only has this person, whoever they found, ruined their retirement, they've essentially ruined everyone's retirement. Okay? Defined benefit plans are what pension plans are. When people talk about companies that take care of them because they worked for them for 30 years and now they get a retirement and a gold watch, this is the pension plan they're talking about. Don't jeopardize that for every other individual you know. Okay? If you cannot stop working, do not stop working. Now, sometimes it plays out like this. You retire, you take your money, you fish that pond dry. Okay? The only thing that's left in there is like one gross old catfish, and you're not going to eat it. So you decide you miss the kids. I think I'm going to go back and drive that bus route. I know that they need help. It's been a year. Absolutely do that. Absolutely go back. You're going to go in as a new Tier 4 member and start a new retirement account while you continue to receive payments from the account that you took your retirement under. That's pretty cool. But remember, they give us a definition of what termination of employment is. Stick to that. Or if you need to go back and help your school out, you have 8 different times per month. You can do that during the 180 days. That's pretty generous. And so get out there, have a good time. But if you have a scenario where you think, uh-oh, this might not be okay, or I wonder if this will work, absolutely give us a call. Okay? We are used to talking to people on the phone about this. We're used to running through the scenarios that will work and won't work and providing good advisement to you about how to be able to do what you'd like to do in retirement. Okay? We're fiduciaries. We are invested in your success in retirement. Plain and simple. So if you have questions about this, call. I know that our number is on that slide that's at the very beginning of this in your binder documents. I know that you can find our website, npers.ne.gov. This is important stuff. Give a call. Okay? So there you go. That is reemployment and the discussion on that. The only thing more fun than reemployment. I hope you're laughing. This usually gets a little bit of a laugh. It's death, you guys, death. That's why it's funny. Okay, so death before retirement. The period of time that we're talking about with this one is now, essentially. Um, it's before you filled out your retirement application and gotten that in and established your effective date. What about right now? Okay. This is the point in time where you consider if you like your spouse even a little bit. Because if you do, you might want to consider who you have on file as your beneficiary currently. Okay? Because we have something called enhanced spousal benefits. And when I say enhanced, I mean enhanced. Because if you have 20 years of service or you're age 65 and the only primary beneficiary that you have listed is your spouse, they have access to an annuity if you pass away right now. They can call up, they can get a lifetime monthly payment under this plan, but you have to have them listed as the only or sole primary beneficiary. Okay? If you got 5 to 20 years of service, then they can take an annuity. Remember, that's a lifetime monthly payment. Or they can take a refund of your account plus 101%. Now, people say, hey, Heather, that's the employer match. Well, no, it's just an unfortunate coincidence that the employer match is 101% as well. But essentially, sure. Okay. Um, so think about what your account balance is. Now I want you to double it. Okay. Now I want you to add 1%. When I said enhanced, I mean enhanced. So this is a big deal. So if you don't have a spouse on as your only or sole primary beneficiary, then maybe you have a non-spousal beneficiary listed or less than 5 years. If that's true and you pass away, what happens is they're entitled to a lump sum payment of your contributions and interest only. Pretty pale in comparison to some of these enhanced spousal benefits. Okay. Somebody asked me, hey, Heather, I've got listed as my primaries my husband and my one child. Now my husband's getting the bulk of the account. Like he's got 80% on the form and my kid's getting 20%. Uh, does my husband still have access to these enhanced spousal benefits? Well, the answer is no. When I said they have to be listed as the sole primary beneficiaries, they have to be the only primary beneficiary. That's what that means. So if my situation was that, what I would do is I would put my spouse on as the primary beneficiary, and then I would put my child on as my contingent beneficiary. Okay? It still means that if me and my spouse are passed away, that we will move down and pay that contingent beneficiary. Okay? But it also means that my spouse has access to these enhanced spousal benefits, which can be very important. Okay? So with that, um, do you know who you have as your beneficiary listed on file? Some of us do, some of us don't. A good place to find that, of course, is on your NPERS annual statement that we send you in July or August, and that's on page 2. We fought pretty hard to actually get your beneficiaries listed on that, okay? So take a check it out. If you don't see them on your annual statement, it could mean that your beneficiary form may be over 15 years old. Because when we changed from the mainframe, which tells you how long it was, um, some of these got moved into the image file, so the picture files that go along with you, but didn't get put on the system, okay, which is where the statements are generated from. Okay, so it could be there, but don't take a chance with could be. Are you ready? This is important. The biggest payments that leave our office, hands down, are death benefit payments. Okay, so don't leave this in the hands of chance. Make sure you know who you have listed as beneficiaries. So you can check that out in your annual statement. You can get into the NPERS online account and you can see your beneficiaries listed there. And if you're sure that you still have people on file, but you don't see them in either of those places, you can write on a piece of paper, hey, I'd like to know what my current beneficiary listing looks like, or I'd like a copy of that old form. And you can send that letter into us and we will send out the paperwork and stuff for you. Okay. Um, these forms are notarized, and the reason that they're notarized is kind of a low-tech fraud deterrent. I know it seems weird, but that notary is supposed to be verifying that that is your signature. Okay, they're supposed to be witnessing you sign that form. So it's kind of a low-tech fraud deterrent to get that, meaning these are the people you wanted paid. Okay, now when's a good time to look at these? Well, now is a good time while I have you thinking about it. Another good time is going to be when you fill out that retirement application. Because as we discussed, sometimes you're going to need to fill out a new beneficiary designation at that point in time. Let's say you have, one of the options that offers you beneficiary flexibility. That would mean a new beneficiary form. Okay. So there you go. If you would like to list a trust as a beneficiary, you certainly can. I do kind of ask, and this is just from a processing perspective on this, if you do put down a trust, maybe put down a trustee that we could contact, somebody who's in charge of that trust. If it's a springing or testamentary trust that's created by your will, maybe you give us the name of an attorney's office. We want to pay you. Or if you'd like to send in your trust documentation, we can put that just right in your file with it too. I am going to tell you, when we pay to a trust, we cut one check. Okay, this is important. We had a lady who thought that what we were going to do was pay it out per what the trust said. And of course, the trust had like 10 beneficiaries on it. That's not how the trusts work. We pay the trust, and then the trust pays out per your wishes. And the person that takes care of that is the trustee. Okay, there you go. This is our beneficiary designation form. And I think you can see here in the right corner, there's a little box that says plan type. If you are a member of more than one plan that we administer, you can, handy dandy, uh, put down on this form your beneficiaries. And then if you want them to apply to all of the accounts that you're a member in, you just check each box. You're like, Heather, how often does that happen? Well, I'm a member of two of these. I'm a member of the state plan and the DCP plan. So if I want my beneficiaries to apply to both, all I have to do is check those boxes. We had somebody in a, what was it, state county seminar last fall who was a member of four of the plans that we administer. It was a state, county, judges, and patrol. And so he was like, I really enjoy filling this form out and just taking care of that. Anyway, you can. As you can see over at the end of these lines in the primary beneficiary box, there's percentages, okay? You need to pick the percentage of your account, and everything's got a total 100%, that you want to go to each beneficiary. I'm going to tell you, more often than you think, we get 3 beneficiaries, and that person puts down 33.3 or 33.33, which is 99.99, just so you know. It needs to total 100%. One of those beneficiaries needs to get 33.34. I'm going to tell you, when we pay it out, it's almost always less than $1. And that child does not think that you love them any more or any less. So don't leave it up to some random process or preference, because I can tell you, when I did these, I gave that 0.34%, if this was all left blank, to the eldest, because I'm the eldest child, and I think we're about due. But there's plenty of people that have different systems. Don't let it be a random system. You choose the percentage that goes in here, okay? Now I can see here there's 5 lines in the primary beneficiary box. Well, what happens if you've got 6 kids? Are you gonna have to pull one to the side? I'm sorry, Jennifer, you just didn't make the cut this year. I mean, we all saw that dance recital. No, no, of course, we've got you covered. There's the back of this form. So you can just list beneficiaries until your heart is content. I know somebody who put down her 14 grandchildren and like 5 favorite charities. It was a lot of beneficiaries to process, but we don't mind doing that as long as you don't mind putting them down and putting your percentages till they total up to 100%. At this point in time, we are going to have literally the briefest discussion about health insurance that you've ever had. And the reason for that, it's a very important reason, is that NPERS does not administer any kind of health insurance. I'm going to say it again. NPERS does not administer any kind of health insurance. However, this is a webinar where we talk about retirement. You cannot talk about retirement in the United States without talking about health insurance. Because if you're not covered by some employer health insurance through your work, then you need to figure something out, because you don't want to get caught without health insurance. Okay? So what we do is offer you things you can look at, places you can look to research, okay? Because sometimes you just need that extra nudge and be like, hey, you can go look here. Maybe you're going to find something you like. That's what this is. So we have a lot of people that may be meeting the rule of 85, and they're going to need to basically leave the plan early at like 55. Okay, where are they getting health insurance? Well, you guys, as far as like the school seminars go, you actually have one more option that most of the other plans that I give, webinars to don't. and that's EHA. EHA has a lot of great offerings as far as the whole health insurance thing goes, but they've got something with Blue Cross Blue Shield. It's a direct bill plan. What happens is you pay the whole premiums and all the fees for that, but it's health insurance. Um, if you're interested in this, there's a website, it's listed right here on the slide. So that means that it's also in the binder documents as well. And it says ehaplan.org/retiree-info. Okay, now on this page, there's a bunch of videos, okay? Like a ton of videos. What you're looking for is the one that says early retirees. Okay? You're looking for one that says early retirees. Now that video is about 30 minutes long, and it just kind of gives you an idea of what this plan covers and who's eligible to participate in it and all this other good stuff about it. If you're interested, check it out. Like I said, this is an option that this plan gets discussed and talked about that other plans, other retirement plans don't have. Okay? So I'm going to tell you a joke. This is a bad joke. But people would always ask my old boss, they would say, "Hey, John, what's the best health insurance that I can get at this point?" And he would always say, "Well, having a spouse that's younger than you that's still working and will keep you on their plan." So, I mean, that should tell you exactly how many options we've got for this kind of thing. It's not a lot. Um, with the next one we're going to talk about the Affordable Care Act, okay? Now this one's had a question mark behind it since the inception of this program, which has been almost 10 years now, just so you know. I don't get into talking about it too much, mainly because this is a very politicized thing, okay? But I am going to tell you, I know current retirees, that's people who are already retired, that are on plans that they found through the ACA, through the Affordable Care Act, and they're paying zero premium for them, and they enjoy them quite a bit. Now, is this for you? I have no idea. I don't know what your situation is. I don't know what kind of health insurance you need, but it's another avenue that you can explore as far as what is available to you. So what you do is you go to your Google search bar and you type in Nebraska Exchanges, ACA, or Affordable Care Act, and it will come up with a website. You put in a couple pieces of information about yourself, and then they will say, okay, well, we've got these on offer to you. And some of them are going to be right up your alley. Some might not be. I know that when you have high income earners that try and find something on this, the premium is often too high. And you look at it and you go, yeah, no. But like I said, I know people that have also gotten zero premium health insurance through this, and they were ecstatic. So there you go. The next thing you can look at is if you're age 65 or coming up on 65 is Medicare. And I have to tell you about a great program that is under the Department of Insurance, and it's called SHIP, which is the State Health Insurance Program. And it used to be, was it? Senior Health Insurance Information Program. It's still SHIP, but it's spelled a little different. And they are amazing as far as a resource for people in the state of Nebraska. Okay, my mom said, "Hey Heather, I need to sign up for Medicare. Will you help me?" And I was like, "No, but I know somebody that can." This is outside of my wheelhouse. Medicare is a hard thing to navigate, but these people, they're the experts on it. We have a video on our website, which is the SHIP presentation about Medicare and the things that they do and the services they provide. I'm going to tell you, my mom, she went there every single year during open enrollment, and they went over her drug formulary, the medicines and prescriptions she took. Now, my mom was an insulin-dependent diabetic, so having her drugs covered or getting the best plan where she had to pay the least because she was on like 10 medications, that was important. Okay. And every single year they reviewed it. Okay. To make sure she was on the best plan that was going to pay for all her meds and pay the most. They can do that. They can do that for you. So, just a really, really fantastic program. I can't say enough good things about them. They have not only helped my family personally, but I know that they helped a bunch of other people as well that I know. Uh, you haven't contacted them, go to their website, check it out, or watch the video. We have a Welcome to Medicare video on our website that you can look at and kind of assess if that's something that you need to be considering at this point in time.